Hi there, Vaishali. As these are your last corrections, let's just jump straight in and get stuck to it. So the flowchart depicts the process of making various types of tea. I'd say types of tea, I wouldn't have the plural. From a common source, fresh tea leaves as well as scented tea, which has added flavours or flavourings. Overall, it can be noted that the steps in making white tea are few, whilst those of green, oolong and black tea is quite complex. The first stage is common to all types and involves collecting, sorting and cleaning the fresh tea leaves. White tea results after steaming the leaves and then drying them. To produce green tea, the leaves undergo one of the steps. So here I would say either pan frying, steaming or firing. The leaves undergo either pan frying, steaming or firing. The next stage is to dry them or roll or shape those leaves. I would just say the leaves. Well, I see what you were trying to do. You're trying to refer specifically to this step, the leaves produced after this step. But you could just say the next step is to then dry, roll or shape the leaves. While drying, jasmine is added as a last step, completing the production of green tea. In order to arrive at oolong or black tea, the leaves must then be fermented. After withering, the leaf edges are bruised by shaking or rolling them in a basket before undergoing a short fermentation before drying to achieve the final product. These colons here, by the way, are troublesome. I would try to stay away from using these. Semicolons are good for separating two distinct sentences that are related, sort of halfway between a comma and a full stop. But these, it's better just to use a comma here. Also, we're not being consistent with where our spaces go. The comma is attached to the word that it follows, and then a space, and then the rest of the sentence, comma, space, sentence. Same for all punctuation. So, there are two different types of black tea, namely Gongfi and broken black. These need rolling into strips and cutting respectively. They are then fully fermented and dried to arrive at a finished black tea. In order to make scented tea, after drying, all three types of teas are treated with flowers and fruits and then cooled. So we don't need this comma, but we do need a comma there. There. To make scented tea, after drying, all three types of tea are treated with flowers and fruits before being cooled. So your essays on whether companies should be made to relocate asks you to refer to policy, legislation, possibly redistribution. So governments of many countries, I would just say here in many countries, because with governments and local councils we're talking about the same thing. So in many countries, local councils nowadays are seen to be relocating big companies away from major cities. I would say this change in policy, or this redistribution of business, has led to many changes in the structure of cities and permitted the suburbs to sprawl and flourish, maybe. The movement has impacted both positively as well as negatively, and this essay will discuss both aspects. Great. Forcing, I would say. Rushing is not appropriate. Rushing means to move at speed, to complete a task at speed, but that's not quite what's happening here. Forcing these businesses away from cities benefits the urban area in various ways. Outward migration to suburbs causes cities to become depopulated as people must commute to more remote areas as opposed to the city centres. I would change this here to, this has the effect of lowering the density of people in the city centre. Sorry, people and traffic. As a result, cost of living decreases and pollution levels in cities is reduced. Moreover, it not only increases job opportunities for regional citizens, but allows companies to build on wider areas with more spacious office and larger parking facilities for both customers and employees. We can just remove this entirely. A win-win situation is kind of informal for an academic essay. You've already stated the benefits to both parties, so you don't need to sum it up like this. Finally, or I would say consequently, companies may increase their production capacity to a great extent while away from the fierce competition of cities. Besides, efficient transport and communication assists them in meeting targets and securing bigger or larger profit margins. Despite these benefits, several drawbacks are noted. This depopulation creates a fiscal deficit in the council budgets. This leads to governments having to build infrastructure, housing, sanitation, schools, hospitals, water and electricity supplies in the suburbs where less is collected in taxes. Meanwhile, in the cities, the maintenance of unoccupied accommodation and other underutilized facilities creates further deficits. Furthermore, fossil fuels burnt to a greater extent by vehicles and industry culminates in increased pollution in previously green areas. People tend to use more private vehicles, and companies require additional heavy goods vehicles to transport their products for distribution and sale. Additionally, long distances become obstacles in reaching customers, and consequently, some company profit margins are narrowed. Finally, the increase in heavy industry in rural areas takes agricultural land from farmers, resulting in lowered food production. To summarize, forcing companies away from cities demonstrates some benefits as well as drawbacks. Pollution, fiscal deficit, and suburbanization gave rise to new problems for companies, governments, or gives rise to new problems for companies, governments, and citizens alike. As a result, I personally believe that this is a negative development or a positive development, depending on your view. So, much better. Most of this was relevant. It just needed to be a little bit smooth. Now, you're constantly talking in the past tense here and past perfect, which makes the whole thing seem like an example. It makes it seem like a case study, like you're referring to one particular city from which you learned a lot of lessons. But you don't mention this city once, so I'm guessing that what you should have done really is kept into the present tense, like I said, gives rise, benefits, but then used examples in your paragraphs to refer to specific cities where this happened. And then you can use the past tense. In Beijing in 2002, for instance, whatever actually you want to use, but use past tense for your examples and present tense for explaining your opinions and your thoughts. That's where I would recommend you make your final improvements. But thanks for these, Vaishali. Good luck in the exam, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye now.